You know, right now, inside your body, there's a silent, microscopic war going on that's keeping you alive. You might not feel it, but you're protected by this incredible army of specialized cells, and they are always on guard. So today, we're going to meet the first responders of this amazing internal defense force. Let's kick things off with something you've probably experienced.
I mean, it seems so harmless, right? A tiny little break in the skin. But to your body, that simple paper cut is a major security breach. And a breach like that, it triggers an immediate and, frankly, a pretty dramatic emergency response.
The second that barrier is broken, countless bacteria and other microbes that are just hanging out on your skin rush in. They see an opening, but they are met with a swift and violent counterattack. The battlefield is your own tissue, and this whole fight kicks off in a matter of seconds.
So, how does your body mobilize its defenses so fast against this sudden invasion? Well, like any good army, it needs a training ground. And it all starts where these cellular soldiers are actually made. Deep within your bones, there's this incredible process happening all the time called hematopoiesis. The easiest way to think of it is that your bone marrow is like a nonstop military academy, just constantly churning out all the different blood cells you need, including, of course, the soldiers for your immune system.
And what's just mind-blowing is that this entire super specialized army comes from just one single type of cell, the hematopoietic stem cell. From that one source, your body creates this whole diverse force of white blood cells or leukocytes and sends them out into your bloodstream, basically on patrol, ready to be deployed at a moment's notice.
All right, so the troops are trained, they're in circulation. So who exactly are the main soldiers on the front lines of this fight? Let's meet the key players.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. If you look at this breakdown for a normal, healthy person, you might expect a more even split between the different types of cells. But just look at that huge slice. Neutrophils make up a whopping 55% of the total force. They are, by far, the most common first responders. The two main cell eaters, or what we call phagocytes, are neutrophils and macrophages. And the best way to think about them is like this. Neutrophils are your SWAT team. They're fast, they show up in huge numbers, but they have really short lifespans. Sometimes they only last a few hours. Macrophages, on the other hand, they're the heavy lifters. They're bigger, more strategic, they live a lot longer, and they're the ones who handle the big cleanup jobs and talk to the rest of the immune system. And this number just hammers home how dominant that SWAT team really is. While the average is around 55%, when you have an active infection, your body kicks production into high gear, and neutrophils can actually surge to make up 60 to 75% of all your white blood cells. It's a key part of their strategy. Overwhelm the enemy with sheer numbers. So, we have our soldiers, and we know there are a ton of them. But how do they actually fight? Well, their number one mission is a process that literally translates to cell eating. The official name for this is phagocytosis. It was first spotted way back in 1882 by a scientist named Ali Mechnikov, who was just watching starfish larvae and saw some of their cells gobbling up foreign stuff. And that's the fundamental game plan for our innate immune system. Find the invader, swallow it whole, and then destroy it. But that brings up a really critical question, right? In the chaos of your body's tissues, how on earth does a neutrophil know the difference between a friendly body cell and a hostile bacterium? I mean, they can't just go around attacking everything. The secret? It's a really clever molecular tagging system. These tags are called opsonins, and you can honestly think of them like little GPS trackers that your body sticks all over an invading bacteria. Molecules like antibodies just coat the enemy's surface, which makes them tasty to the phagocytes, and basically marks them as a clear target that says, "Eat me." So the whole mission plays out in 3 key steps. First, you've got the chase. The neutrophil is like a bloodhound. It follows a chemical trail right to the target. Second is the tag. Once it gets there, the invader gets marked with those tasty opsonins. And finally, the trap. The neutrophil's outer membrane literally reaches out, wraps around the invader, and pulls it inside, sealing it in this deadly little bubble called a phagosome. Okay, so the enemy is trapped inside. Now what? The cell doesn't just crush it? Oh no, it unleashes a devastating chemical arsenal to completely and utterly obliterate it. This all-out attack is known as the respiratory burst. It's this super rapid release of highly reactive chemicals that are designed to just tear the microbe apart at a molecular level. It's one of the most powerful weapons in your body's entire arsenal. So how does this chemical attack actually happen? Well, it's a brilliant and super fast chain reaction. The cell starts with plain old oxygen and, using a series of special enzymes, turns it into more powerful stuff, like hydrogen peroxide. But it doesn't even stop there. The final step is the real masterstroke. It uses an enzyme called myeloperoxidase to create the ultimate weapon, hypochlorite ions, which might sound just a little familiar for a very good reason. Because it's basically bleach. That's right, I'm not kidding. Your own immune cells are manufacturing the same fundamental chemical that we use to disinfect swimming pools, and they're using it to obliterate bacteria from the inside out. It is an absolutely incredible and ruthlessly effective system. But as powerful as this system is, it is not foolproof. It's designed to fight enemies it can actually destroy. So what happens when it meets an opponent that's basically indestructible? Let's take a look at a really tragic real-world example, asbestosis. Asbestos fibers are microscopic, they're sharp, and, this is the key part, they are chemically indestructible by our body's enzymes. So when they're inhaled, the immune system does exactly what it's supposed to do. It launches its standard attack. Here's the tragic sequence of events. A macrophage in the lung finds one of these fibers, and, doing its job, it engulfs it. But then, it can't digest it. The frustrated macrophage eventually just dies, rupturing and spilling all of those toxic chemicals into the healthy lung tissue around it. Then, other macrophages rush in to clean up the mess, they engulf the very same fiber, and the whole vicious cycle repeats itself over and over, leading to chronic inflammation and permanent scarring of the lungs. It's a heartbreaking case of our own defenses being turned against us. But let's be super clear, that's a case of system failure. In a normal, successful fight against a regular old bacterial invader, the macrophage plays an absolutely heroic and essential role after that initial battle is won. Their job goes way beyond just attacking. Macrophages are the ultimate cleanup crew. They consume the dead bacteria and, just as important, all the dead neutrophils that sacrifice themselves in that first wave. They also release chemical signals that can cause a fever, which makes your body a worse place for invaders to live. And, maybe most importantly, they act as critical messengers, carrying pieces of the dead enemy to the more advanced parts of your immune system to basically say, hey, remember this guy for next time? And that right there is the key takeaway. Everything we've talked about today, the neutrophils, the macrophages, that crazy chemical burst, that's all part of the innate immune system. It's the fast, kind of brute force first line of defense. But that raises a really fascinating question, doesn't it? What does your body do about enemies like viruses, things that are clever enough to bypass this whole system by hiding inside our own healthy cells? Well, that is a whole different war and a story for another time.